second and third one I could do without. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to FDM Mapping. We've got Brett here, who will be presenting here, and Bridget Nettesheim will be online, and she will answer questions and everything kind of toward the end here. What we're going to be talking about today is going to be talking about your efficiency through collaboration, building foundation data model mapping solution. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brett here, and he will take you the rest of the way.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Welcome. Thank you for coming in. I'll set the stage immediately by saying the visuals and the slides today with the keynote speaker as well as all the awards have been top-notch. I hope you all reset your expectations now as I take you on a voyage of elementary level PowerPoints. Along with me today, oh, come on, let's go. I'm Brett Husengay. I am a software engineer with DoIT on a team called WAMS. And I'm joined today by Larry Hughes, who's also a DoIT employee with the EI integration team, as well as Bridget Nettesheim, who works for ATP on the FDM functional team. Today, I want to take you guys on a bit of talking about collaboration, what that means to me, ways that we can work better as a campus, and how we can all work together in that space. I'm going to start where we always start, in school. So, why should we collaborate, and what does this do for us? I think we can all agree that when we all collaborate, when you're on a great team, when things are working well, things work great. It improves everything. It's a huge boon to individuals, to teams, and projects. It helps foster innovation by allowing each team member to share what they know, their experience and their expertise, and to bring new, diverse experiences and to share them with the team so we all can improve. This also leads to creative solutions and new ways of thinking that individuals likely are not going to come to by themselves. Through these improvements, we find new efficiencies by streamlining our processes. And lastly, collaboration also helps us improve and enhance efficiencies by having a greater pool of resources and experiences so that when we have issues or new problems or changes come up, we have the tools that we need in order to solve those in an efficient manner. Come on. So, I think everybody here has probably gone to some sort of seminar about Agile. The key tenets of which are iterative development, work on what's important, prioritize getting something out the door early so you can start working on getting that feedback. Getting continuous feedback throughout the entire process, which helps you embrace and manage all of that change, and to meet early and often in order to communicate those changes. And lastly, cross-functional teams, getting a mixture of people together so that each person can help solve all of those unique issues. The next problem, well, what system are we going to use? Are we going to use Scrum, Lean, Extreme Programming, DSDM, Feature-Driven Development, Kanban, Crystal? I would guess if I polled the room, we'd have 35 more options on this board. I may be controversial in saying this, but I don't believe in many of these systems working at large scale. I think that we can take the key tenets of many of these systems and bend the rules, especially when it comes to large team collaboration. In a small team where one person can help guide a team on a voyage of Agile, you can take those pieces and apply them in a very strict manner. However, as your team sizes grow, especially when you have multiple diverse teams across an institution the size of UW, many of those systems start to break down or are difficult with the overhead in order to manage them. Instead, my philosophy is take what works and apply that to your project, use what you know, and help others to build that collaborative space. I know that many of you have lots of experience in Agile, so today I kind of want to talk about maybe a different system that maybe you have not heard of, called collective impact. While this isn't strictly an Agile or an IT-specific framework, this is a system used for engineering social change, which is a big word. They came from Stanford in about 2015, and this system was used across a wide range of international organizations, including the Calgary Homeless Foundation, which works to end homelessness in Calgary, the Harlan Children's Zone, which helps end the cyclical patterns of poverty, the Global Fund to fight AIDS, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, which helps increase immunization availability around the world. I think that if you have a system that can help engineer issues and solve problems that are this big, there must be something there that we can learn and bring back to campus, because clearly we can't be as diverse of a population as teams as some of these organizations. One of the largest tenets within collective impact is what they call the starting conditions, or keys to success. This is 5 elements that they believe if you have in place before you start undertaking a project, the odds that you are going to be successful is astronomically higher. And that by prioritizing and developing these 5 tenets, you can have a successful project. So let's walk through some of these. Many of these are going to seem very familiar to all of you, especially if you've done Agile or other collaboration or other systems of collaboration. The first one is a common agenda or a shared vision. For a project to be successful, we need to have a shared vision. We all need to know where we're going and a common goal so that all of us can be aligned and pulling in the same direction and working towards those objectives. This clarity helps us prioritize tasks and make strategic decisions, and also to take this message around and get buy-in and get people to believe in the project that we're trying to work on. The second key tenet is a backbone support. In the context of IT, on a small team, this could be something like a project manager or a scrum master. As you grow into larger collaborations, this is likely more a team that can help coordinate the efforts of this diverse groups and all of the resources along with it. They work to make sure that all of the teams have resources and guidance that they need in order to succeed. As everybody knows, coordination, planning, meetings, all these things take lots and lots of time that many of the individuals or teams that are associated with this project are not going to have. So you need to have a dedicated resource that is there to help manage these things. Once you have that team in place, their next key tenet is mutually reinforcing activities. What this means is all of us should have a plan. We need to have clear, defined tasks, but all these tasks should build together in order for us to collaborate and find commonalities. So in IT, this could be as simple as something like a developer is able to focus on developing and has a mutually reinforcing task from a QA tester who can go through their code, review things, provide feedback, and those two can work in collaboration in order to have a better product. Continuous communication. I think this one's a pretty big no-brainer, but also one that, especially at the campus level, we tend to fail at the most. Continuous communication can mean something like scrums, stand-ups, or any other types of frequent meetings. But it's not so much about the structure that we meet, it's more about the fact that we can communicate on a frequent, continuous method. For every project, this may look different, but it's something that I think is the most important piece that we all can improve on. The last piece is shared measurements. In order to know we've made it to the end, we need to start by knowing where the end is. And that means having some sort of a metric that lets us define when we're done. Okay, classroom is done. We're done with the spiel. Let's get into something a little bit more gritty and what we actually want to talk about today. The members that are here speaking today are all members of a large team that are a part of a larger initiative called ATP. For those who have not heard about this, which I'm guessing is not many of you, ATP is the Administrative Transformation Project. This is a multi-year, large transformational project across UW system that is moving to move finance, HR, and many other administrative systems into a new world of Workday. Specifically, the group that I have been working on helps with the financial mapping. If anybody on campus has done any financial work, this is all of the old SFS funding strings. This is things like fiscal year, fund, business unit, your UDDS, any of those pieces that tells you where a funding string needs to be billed. After, and when we're in this new world of Workday, we have new funding strings that contain new elements, things like cost centers and programs and projects and gifts. This diagram on the top is the old state, and the bottom is the new state, which makes this seem like a really nice one-to-one conversion. But if anybody has done any work in finances on campus, you'll know that it's not always that simple. As we have gone through using the system for so many years, we've accrued a lot of historical context and barnacles, as well as refactorings that really have not been implemented into our funding structure. So this has been an opportunity for the campus to go through a cleanup process before we move into Workday in order to have a nice, clean, fresh slate. In order to do that cleanup, sadly, it takes human effort. Each combination needs to be manually reviewed, checked, and mapped for how it should be applied in the new world. To put this into context, as of today, we are north of 500,000 unique funding strings for UW system, 300,000 of which are just for UW-Madison, each of which would need to be manually checked and reviewed. As they started to undertake this project, ATP and the FDM functional team started where most places start. How do we get this done now, quickly, and agile? Their first stab at taking care of this mapping process was a slew of Excel workbooks. This worked great at the beginning. It allowed them to be agile, to quickly change what data was included, quickly share all of those pieces and distribute it where it needed to go, as well as just to have it up in a very quick manner. However, if anybody has worked in these types of environments, you'll know that's not always the best place. There's a lot of challenges in this. For one, data integrity. When you're taking these sheets and you're spreading them out to the wind and collecting them back and trying to collate into one pile, you're bound to have issues. You're bound to have conflicts. Without change logging or a formal approval process, how do you know which change is correct? Now you need to go all the way back around that review process again to validate that everything is correct. There's not really any strong validation for any of this. So every typo, fat finger, missed copy paste gets injected into this large data set, and again, needs to be at some point re-reviewed, cleaned up, and done again. Access control. Today, there's about 120 delegated mapping editors, each of which are only allowed to have some restricted section of that rule set that they are allowed to edit. In order to manage this, they would split things into many sheets, which caused many of these other issues. Additionally, they needed to go into something like SharePoint and manually add and remove people as needed to each of these sheets. And lastly, it really is not set up for integration. When you have something in an Excel workbook and you need to pull that downstream, when you need to share that to campus, when you need to consume that for other processes, the lack of consistency and all of that agility that you loved up front all of a sudden comes home to roost, and you really have a real pain on your hands. So, where do we start? Keep in mind that we were brought in November 2022. To set the stage for you, ATP was looking to go live this last year, 2023, in July. They knew that they had these problems on their hands, so they came to do it and asked if there was anything we could do to help. So, going back to what I was talking about before, it was a great point for us to step in and say, do we think we can be successful if we stepped in today? As with many other groups, the great place to start is with a charter, a living document that lets us document what risks, where we see the project going, what we think we can deliver on that tight timeline. We were able to define what done looks like. We need, before July 2023, to have all of these rules mapped. Well, what does that look like? We needed a backbone support. For this project, we were very blessed, and I'm very thankful to the FDM functional team for stepping up as that backbone support and being that central communication point, so that when DoIT stepped in on my team with WAMS and Larry's team with EI, we were able to seamlessly plug ourselves into this collaborative environment with a central point that we could go to ask questions or get feedback or guidance. And mutually reinforcing activities, even though there's this large group of collaboration, by clearly defining what roles each of them needed, we have the functional team providing that leadership and guidance. You have us at DoIT helping with some of those development practices and feeding back and forth. We'll talk a little bit more of that in a little bit. We have another ATP team working to do actual conversions to get that data into Workday, as well as all of these 120 mappers across campus. Lastly, there's all of you, and I know many of you have not really entered this collaborative space of yet, but I anticipate many of you will. Whether that is if you are an individual looking at funding strings and wanting to see where this converts in future state, we wanted to be able to provide those tools to you. And for developers who needed to do legacy conversions, to make sure that those tool sets were available to do large-scale conversions. And lastly, communication. This team already set up to have weekly or bi-weekly meetings. The EI team was already set up to have daily Scrum meetings and bi-weekly sprint reviews. And many of us were already well-versed in using Teams to communicate on an asynchronous and collaborative basis in large teams. And again, I really want to stress this one, because I feel like as campus, this is the place where almost all of our projects go to die. We need to talk more, we need to talk more frequently, and we need to learn how to find that commonality in order for our projects to be successful. So, in December 2023, we had decided that we had met all 5 of these conditions, and it was time to go. So, I'm going to talk a little bit more technically here about the tools that were developed and what that means for everybody else. Who we are, myself and my team, we are a team on Do It called WAMS. We are a group of about 14 full-time developers. We work in the Microsoft.NET stack, and we support about 350 custom applications across campus. One piece that I'm most proud of for our team in order to provide things in a fast and efficient manner is we developed a template that all of our apps are built on top of that we call the WAMS template. This is a trunk application that provides a lot of the common functionality you need in a web application, such as campus styles, a large slew of common components, pre-built authentication using all of the federated login across system, as well as a slew of other user management tools and site configurations. Giving this template, we were able to quickly stand up a large editor. This is very small font, so I apologize. It's hard to catch this type of interface in a usable way. However, we were able to move things quickly out of a spreadsheet and into an editor that looks more like this. This provides user validation. It tries to predict what values may be useful to a human as they're reading through this by saying, hey, there's a lot of similar things that are to this funding string that are mapped to this fund or this function or this program. And lastly, it also had a slew of smart lookup tools to make sure that you were choosing the right grants and gifts and other objects associated with it. For those of you that are on campus and use financials on your day-to-day and are wanting to look at this, I can post links to this. This is a public tool for anyone with a net ID where you can go up in current state. Note that the data still is being mapped, so things are subject to change, but you can go in today and look up where your funding strings for your group will map to once you go things into Workday. This is great for one-off lookups. However, I know many of us also have large ancillary systems that are also going to need to make this conversion. And that's where we started to work on an automated data mapping tool. What this does is you can take a file of raw SFS funding strings, feed it into the system, and have it hand back a file that maps those to their new Workday corresponding tool. Given the tight timeline, this is one place that we really found those mutually reinforcing tenants to be useful. You're able to upload the file, or get a template, populate it with your SFS files, upload it. This file is then sent over into IICS where it can be mapped and then returned to the web interface where it can be downloaded. I'm glossing over this. There's lots of very great trainings on this. There's lots of other campus trainings available and coming for this. But one piece that I wanted to talk about with the mutually reinforcing piece is this. My team did not have the time or resources in order to develop this, but we had the website already in place. By tasking off this conversion to the IICS team, we were able to seamlessly work together. So what this process does is when you upload the file into the website, it throws it into an S3 bucket, which is then ingested into that IICS process, which then feeds it back into the S3 bucket, from which I can then serve that back out from the web interface. And through this really stark differentiation of tasks, it allowed both of our teams to start immediately, to iterate on those changes, and in order to share that workload that needed to be done on such a tight timeline. So apologize for going fast. Wanted to make sure we fit all of this in. I'm now going to hand this over to Larry Hughes, who is the team lead on the Do It EI integration team. Larry, can you hear me?
Thank you, Brett. Can you hear me?
Yes. Let me turn it up.
Okay.
You want to try it there?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm EI integration team lead. We're a small team of 4, and our primary work is to manage the iPaaS system. And if you don't know what an iPaaS system is, that stands for Integration Platform as a Service. This is a cloud-based system for building integrations, and it lowers the barrier to building integrations by providing it through no-code or low-code tool sets. Our specific iPaaS system we use here in Madison and within universities of Wisconsin is Informatica's Intelligent Cloud Services, or IICS, as Brett's referred to it before. And just to be confusing, Informatica has since changed the name to Intelligent Data Management Cloud, or IDMC. So if you're looking for it, you might hear it by that name as well. I'll refer to it as IICS here. It's also provided, like I said, through the Universities of Wisconsin, and it is currently used to support both the Administrative Transformation Program and the Ancillary Systems Program. Our primary team role is service. We build and support the UW-Madison integrations and even help other teams and people build integrations of their own using IICS. We provide public documentation of IICS knowledge and what we've learned, and we update this often. We serve as UW-Madison Informatica support to IICS. And we're responsible for the Integrator Training Canvas course. And this is a free, if you haven't heard about it, it's a free self-paced course in Canvas that provides background information on integrations, APIs, and even how to use a IICS. As a basis, it's 8 modules. The first 5 are just relevant to anybody with an integration and interest in integrations, including managers, decision makers, or even potential integrators. The last 3 are very detailed and focus on IICS. So if you think you're going to be a potential integrator learning about this is certainly a good course to start with. It will be soon available through the University of Wisconsin System Canvas, and then if it is not already, I do not know on that. Next slide, please. Okay. Our primary role really is to leverage the rapid prototyping with this development capabilities of iPaaS to process files submitted through the website that Brett has developed. So we work closely with Brett to design and build the integration functions. And these functions include consistency, error checks, reporting, data conversion, and file moving. As a secondary role, though, I took on with my team, since we do use a Scrum methodology, took on an administrative role, or what I would call an administrative role, in that we hosted the weekly scrums and sprint reviews that relieved Brett of this task. I think it worked very well for this. As a small team, it did make more sense. I mean, we're only 4. I think Brett's team is like 14, and allowed him to focus on web development. And as a tertiary role, both Brett and myself attended relevant stakeholder meetings. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is just a data flow diagram of the work I've just described for what the iPaaS system does, and I think it shows what the integration platform is good at. That's small, repetitive tasks. While I know that Brett is a capable programmer, he could certainly code something like this. iPaaS really reduces the development time for processes like these, hence the reason for our collaboration on this project. Okay, next slide. And I think our collaboration worked well for a number of reasons. Main one being that there were a clear understanding of responsibilities. It felt just natural. I mean, Brett and I just sort of divided this up by what we do, and it worked out really well. The division of labor was almost implicitly understood from the start, and a large part may reflect on our personal, why we're in the roles we're in. And by this, I mean, as integrators, we're used to sort of making things happen behind the scenes. So working with someone who is used to handling higher profile public-facing aspects of projects was very welcome to us. Or more succinctly, perhaps, I guess you could say we leveraged our team's strengths and weaknesses for this. The second major reason it worked well was because Brett was willing to work as part of our team. We do use Scrum, like I said, and while I'm not his manager or team lead, the arrangement fit well because he would show up at our morning Scrums when he had something to say, and the team loved talking to him and having him there. That's all I have, Brett.
No, it's not picking up. Can you speak into my
laptop? I will talk here so everybody can hear me. Secondly, as Larry just said, finding those separate concerns, making implicit, this is your side of the fence, this is mine, and let's find out how we can both hold up that fence together in order to help each other. Few here from Larry, I think we may just have to fly past. It's not always about work. I think these social teams are great, not just from a collaborative environment, but also just finding relationships at work
And it's through those relationships that we can find a lot of commonality and efficiencies. Collaboration extends beyond the bounds of this project. While this project brought Larry's and my team together, a lot of this also will continue through the future as we find more and more collaborations. Being in those common meetings, surfacing those common problems. I didn't know much about what their team did before this collaboration. And now I feel comfortable enough that if I have a question, I can show up at one of their meetings and ask a question. If they need help or something that they think might fit from our team, they can come and chat with us. And in that same vein, cross-functional teams are almost always better. We all are really smart people. There's really, really great, talented IT professionals on this campus. And it's great if we can find those spaces where we can all shine together, because we always shine better when we work together. That's all I had for slides for today. And if anybody has questions, I think we might be.
We have time for maybe one or two.
Okay.
Kevin?
Yeah.
I'm finding out of your group in WAMs, you have around 14 people. Yep. How many of that work on one project, or do you have a handful of people, or is everyone working on this, or are they other people working?
Sure. So the question is about WAMs and how our 14 developers kind of staff off onto projects. I will say it depends. We do a large range of projects, everything from very, very small APIs or things like that, that one developer will work on almost exclusively by themselves, all the way up to some very, very large projects. A few that we have are things like CSIS and a project called WeCan, which helps find employment opportunities for educators across the state. Those are much larger collaborations and will have some portion of our team. But typically we are on 1 to 4 developers per project. It's pretty common. Great question. Thank you.
All right, any more questions? All right, I want to take the opportunity then to thank Brent and Bridget and Larry, who I forgot to introduce at the end. Sorry, Larry. And that will end our session for today. It is time for lunch. I'm not quite sure where that's being served, but I'm sure we'll figure it out because we're all smart people.
All right. If anybody has more questions, feel free to find me afterwards. Happy to chat. Thank you.